Well, welcome, viewers, to our installment of Live from the Nursery. My name's Josh Nuzzo. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the nursery manager for Point Blue Conservation Science's STRAW program. STRAW, if you're not familiar, is an acronym for Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. We're coming to you live, not from the nursery. It's supposed to rain eventually. But so we moved ourselves inside to our I'm like looking at the notes, to our storage unit in the soil lab upstairs here in Petaluma, California, just down the way from our office. Today we're in our storage unit. We're here in Petaluma, California, and we're also on the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok and the Southern Pomo people, who are today known as the Federated Indians of Greater Rancheria. I'm just going to read these notes real quick. Our aim with these live events is to engage nature lovers in the SFA area and beyond in our habitat restoration efforts led by us, Point Blue Conservation Science, and our many partners to help increase our awareness and our excitement, right? That's important. Our excitement about the ecological importance of ecosystem restoration, which is really perfect because that's pretty much all we do here at STRAW and Point Blue, is engage with the public, volunteers, and partners, and primarily students, to get folks out on the landscape and engaged in place-based education. Our program started about 30 years ago, and now it's developed into a really beautiful mosaic of different activities, all centering around ecological restoration. And I'm the nursery manager, and we manage 3 nurseries in the North Bay, and we have one just down the way on Casa Grande Road at Casa Grande High School, where we're growing a ton of our plants for our upcoming restoration season. So what I'd like to do with you all today is just kind of walk through some of our plants that we're using and the seed processing that we do to get them ready for the upcoming season and for germination in spring of 2024. Because things are always busy at the nursery, even when plants are like dead and dying back. You know, we're always working really hard and doing a lot of planning and adaptive management and things like that. So there's always something to do. So I'm really excited to bring you all in to this side of the conservation work, the kind of the more behind the scenes stuff. So I think we'll just get down to it. Being the nursery manager means that I do a lot of different things, all centering around plants. And one of my favorite things to do is going out and seed collecting. It's foundational to all the programming that we do at STRAW, because without seeds, where do you get plants? You know, and what are the students going to plant without plants? So it's a really fun thing to do. It's really important to almost our entire programming. And it's just like another great way to engage with nature and get paid. Sweet. So with Point Blue Conservation Science, we're not generally always going out willy-nilly and dilly-dallying and pitter-pattering and getting seeds. We actually have a seed collection ethic and guideline that we follow. And I just want to highlight a few things for you viewers to keep in mind if and when you decide to go out and seed collect yourself. So there's a few things that we like to keep in mind when we're seed collecting, and that generally is to collect responsibly, which means ethically and legally. We also want to make sure that we're collecting from a variety of different species. Our impacts on the landscape are minimal as possible, and we're following some general biological principles to ensure that we're getting the most robust seed stock of the species that we'd like to collect. So for us, what we like to do, because we're an organization working in the real world, is we get seed collection permits from state parks or Marin County parks. Those are our 2 right now. But we usually use a permitting process, and then we submit all our collection ethics. One thing that is important to keep in mind when you're going out collecting is to not over collect. We want to make sure that we're collecting, depending on the species, about 5 to 10% of the overall seed stock in a given area. And then I think if you have any questions about our seed collection protocol and ethic, we can talk more about it. There's a lot of good stuff in here about disease prevention and wildlife, courtesy. But otherwise, I'd just like to get going and introduce you all to one of our favorite plant species that we use for restoration. And this right here, what we're looking at, is the coast live oak, or Quercus agrifolia. It's in the Fagaceae family, which is the beech family, and it's a really awesome plant for ecological restoration. Makes a great plant for your garden. It's really fun to collect, and that's why we're profiling it here first. So if you know about oaks, that's great. This will be a lot of review. If you don't, then I'd like to introduce you to this. Is the coast live oak. This is a branch I found and didn't collect from the parking lot tree. I found it ethically and legally. And I just want to show you all this branch because we have a lot of different oaks here in California, and they can hybridize. So when we're looking for oaks, we're paying attention to a few things. We're paying attention to the leaf shape. You can see on the coast live oak, it's kind of curved in with these little bristles along the margins, or just the sides of the leaves. And then you can also see there's acorns there. That's a good sign. That's an oak tree. These acorns, you'll notice, are a bit old and desiccated, which means just like dried out and rotten. So what I got you, they're not a really super great example of what we're looking for when we collect, but it's something that we're trying to avoid. Right here, I found these acorns actually like in the parking lot. These are rejects, but they're really great examples of what a typical coast live oak acorn looks like. They generally are more like elliptic, I guess, or almond shaped, and they have these striations or beautiful like markings along the sides. That's characteristic of a coast live oak. You'll also notice the reason why I found this one in the parking lot is because you'll find that it has a little hole right here. When you're collecting, you want to make sure that you're collecting from viable seeds. And that's really hard when you want to be collecting like hundreds and hundreds of acorns because you're going to repopulate a whole forest. So we generally, what we do is we collect as much as we can, ethically and legally, and with our project goals in mind. And then what we can do is we take all our acorns here, and what we do for all of our oak species, buckeyes, and walnuts, and bays, is we'll take our seeds, and then what we're going to do is we put them in a bucket of water. This is just like regular old hose water. And then we see if they sink or float. Acorns that sink usually have a good endosperm or like nutrition or seeds inside of the shell, and then ones that float, you can see sometimes have holes. There's little weevils that'll like wheedle out of there, little grubby things and stuff like that. So these ones, the floaters, we'd say are not viable. We compost them, and then what we would do with the ones that sank is we collect those up. We'll give them a bleach bath, which is just like a 10% bleach solution to kill any of the spores, like if there's any molds or mushrooms or any other pests or pathogens on the acorns. We'll give them a bleach bath, and then what we like to do is put them into cold stratification. Right here, what I have is a bag of about 220 coast live oak acorns. Look at that little heart. These are going to our site at Brushy Peak, which is northeast of Livermore, California. And we're working there with East Bay Regional Parks and other partners, and they love oaks. And so what we like to do is we take our viable acorns. After we bleach them, we put them in a bag. All this white stuff we're seeing here is perlite. You can get it at a common garden store. It just provides some space and air in between each of the seeds. And then we also like to keep them damp, because what we're doing when we say cold stratification, basically it's just like a fancy word for saying we're simulating like a cold, wet winter. So we'll put these all in here. These ones are actually sprouting right now, which is awesome. Very crazy. And then we will seal these up. Make sure there's not a ton of air in there. And then we'll keep them in the fridge until restoration. And these ones will be planted directly on the site. We don't grow acorns or we don't grow oak trees in the nursery all the time. We found that they do best when they're installed directly on the site. Wonderful. So that's a coast live oak. Beautiful plant. Another one. I have little fun facts too. I think my coast live oak fun fact was really fun. No, it wasn't. My fun fact I thought was really fun was actually for the valley oak here, or Quercus lobata, also in the Fagaceae family or the beech family. This is a really spectacular plant. This one is really marvelous for restoration. Within the biodiverse world that we live in of the Bay Area, valley oaks have found to be islands of biodiversity as well, because they host a lot of different bird species, amphibians, reptiles, invertebrates, things like that. And I also ethically and legally collected this beautiful sprig of a valley oak just to hold side by side to show you the difference between these two different species that grow pretty close to each other. So right here you can see this is our valley oak. It has these deeply lobed leaves. It's also pretty soft. It's not very resinous. It's a deciduous tree, which means that its leaves, you can see, are slowly turning yellow and they will fall off. They do this every year. It's normal. It's natural. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And you'll also, another indicator that this is a valley oak and maybe not a black oak or something that also has lobed leaves is there's no little spikes in the margins. They're completely smooth. And you can see the difference here. The coast live oak is evergreen and really the leaves are resinous and firm. And the valley oak is deciduous and has these deeply lobed, kind of soft leaves. Really beautiful tree. The valley oaks are amazing plants. They can live to be about 600 years old. And like I said, they're a food source for a variety of animals and birds, including one of my favorites, the acorn woodpecker. So cute. And also the western scrub jay. You know, you'll see them flying around, making lots of noise, living their lives. And planting these as well, because they have their little caches of acorns. And something I'd like to show you here as I pull these acorns out of cold stratification is that this acorn is more, a word that comes to mind is rotund. There's other things to note when you look at the dichotomous key, but generally just right off the bat, I'm noticing that there's no striations. It's a general, more of a monochromatic acorn and is rounder and larger than the coast live oak. I guess here, let's get you a side by side, right? That's what people in the chat are demanding. Side by side, acorns, side by side, right? You can see here, they're pretty distinct, but they can get confusing. So it's good to have a lot of characteristics in mind when you're going out seed collecting, especially if you have target species in mind. Yeah. The valley oak, just like the coast live oak, we do the float test, sanitize the seeds, and then enter them for cold strat. And these ones are also going to Brushy Peak. What a great site. They're going to Brushy Peak later this season, and they're going to be installed on the landscape directly. This is a good one, and I hope you all out there, whoever you are, I hope you collect these ones, because this here, what I have, is the California buckeye, or Aesculus californica, which is in the, I just looked this up, the Sapindaceae family. Yeah, so cool. Oh my god, I'm just realizing, friends, that I forgot to introduce you to our wonderful camera person. Behind the camera, who you can't see, but I can see, is V. Destrola, our wonderful nursery technician and camera person, and just native plant lover. That's the way that came to mind, sorry. Great. And V loves buckeyes. And actually, I had to just restrain V from trying to pull this one open because these ones are so fun to open. Buckeyes are really fantastic. They're fun to collect, and they're actually the biggest seed in California. And you may notice them because they're kind of like this NSFW seed hanging off the tree like this and kind of just dangling like a pendulum until the right moment when the husk will split open. This is when you know that they're generally ripe or ready to be ripening soon. So this one, you can just peel it back. Look at that. Processing is so easy. And here's your buckeye seed. Very cool. They're quite variable and really beautiful too. I just love admiring them because I have no life, and they're just so beautiful. And what you can see here is actually this like it looks like a nose, this protrusion or whatever it is actually the taproot that's going to be emerging when this plant decides to germinate and grow. And just like the acorns for the coast live oak and the valley oak, we will also give this one a float test in the water, see if it floats or sinks. If it sinks, it's viable, then it'll get sanitized and enter cold strat. Just like these ones. And I actually might see one that is like busting open right now, which might be interesting. Sorry about it. But you can kind of see that there's a lot of variability. They're covered in perlite. It's normal. You can see how there's a bunch of variability in them, in their size and their weight, and then also in their colors as well. And that's something that's outlined in our seed collection ethics and guidelines, is that we want to make sure that we're not... sorry, SOS people. That we're not maybe judging the plant for superficial things like this is the prettiest one. We want to be collecting from a variety of different plants because they're all displaying different phenotypes, which is just a physical characteristic, which represents the variety of genotypes that they have, which is like their DNA and gene pool. So that's something we keep in mind when we're collecting all of our seeds as well. The Buckeye are just really awesome and quite variable. So no matter what seed, we keep those things in mind. Yeah. All right. So moving on down. How about everybody just like takes this sip of your drink, because that's what I want to do too. I hope you couldn't hear me swallow. All right. So we're gonna want gloves for this one. This one, unfortunately, I don't have a plant card, which is so fine because we have the plant here itself. This one here is the big leaf maple, or Acer macrophyllum, and it's actually in the same family as the California buckeye, the Sapindinaceae family. Very weird, very interesting, right? And they have very different seeds, huh?
Before we move on, we talk more about Acer, there's a question about how do you plant a buckeye?
Oh my god. Oh my god. So what we do with the buckeyes, let me just remove this. Just like the acorns of the coast live oak and the valley oak and all the different acorns that we plant at Point Blue Conservation Sciences straw program, the buckeyes we like to put into cold... These headphones are not the right shape for my ear holes. Okay, what we like to do is we like to put them into cold strat, generally for a few weeks, maybe like no more than a couple months. And then we're going to send these out to the site itself for the students to plant directly onto the land. And what we'll see here, that's why I was pointing out this is not a super good example. That's why I was pointing out the taproot, because what you want to do, this isn't a good one either. They're all fine and normal. I'm just looking for one that has like a really like protruding taproot, and I'm not finding one. But what we like to do is we like to identify the taproot. I think it's actually just right here, curving down like this. And you can see this is where it was attached to the stem. It'll fall down, or we'll pick it and then we'll plant it, and we plant it just like this, where the taproot can grow straight down into the ground. And we don't grow these in the nursery. They're really fun to grow, though. They grow really, really fast and are really rewarding. You should totally do it. We don't grow it for restoration sites in the nursery because we find that they do really, really well when they're just installed on the landscape. And when I say installed on the landscape, it's a bigger process than that. We're usually like scraping weeds and digging holes for gopher baskets and filling it with kind of loose soil, and then placing the seeds in there and then sprinkling some soil on top. You don't need to fully cover them. And then we put a lid on the gopher basket that we install in the ground so that wildlife doesn't come in and get them. But yeah, just placing them on the ground is great. Thanks for asking. I'm gonna sweep after this, so don't even worry about it. So we have some good ones. So this is the Acer macrophyllum. It's a fantastic plant. It's really beautiful. Take a look at those macrophyllums. They're gorgeous right now. Please, if you're not gonna grow this, like just go out in the world and look at them. They're generally turning like bright yellow, and they're really easy to spot on the landscape. This is a really beautiful riparian tree, which just means it grows along creeks and streams, generally in a little bit more rocky area. You can also find it like in more intact understories of like Douglas fir, coast redwood forests. And these seeds are really fun, and I'm actually going to put my gloves on today because they're the most dangerous seeds that we work with. And when I say dangerous, I just mean that they're irritating and they'll give me dermatitis. It's just even that bad. Because these seeds are also known as samaras, and if you had a whimsical childhood, you would know of these as like the helicopter seeds. I hope it helicopters for you. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Well, it didn't. But you'll notice that they have these beautiful wings here. So when they're just ripe and there's a strong autumn breeze, it'll blow them off the branches and then they'll whirly bird down to the ground, hopefully in a creek or stream where they'll float away. But these ones, fortunately for us, we found them on the tree itself. We actually shook the tree and then it like rained. It was like a very mystical like pumpkin spice moment and very fall. And we collected them from there. And the reason why I'm wearing gloves, I don't know if you can see this, but they have these little hairs on their, my ear. They have these little hairs on the seed itself that can get lodged in your skin and be really irritable. Almost like one of those like fuzzy cactuses that you want to pet really bad. Yeah, so we wear gloves. And the way we like to do these is process them. It's really simple. Is we can use with our clean scissors. All we do is we cut off the tail. And by cutting off the tail, we're just kind of reducing the amount of organic material that's going to be in our fridge or in the bag. So there will be less opportunities for mold and things like that. And just like the buckeyes and acorns, we're going to sanitize this with a bleach solution. But unlike the the buckeyes and the acorns, what we're going to do is we're going to give this one a freshwater soak for about 24 hours. And then what we're going to do, you guessed it, that's right, fam, is we are going to put it into cold strat with the perlite and put it in the fridge. This one we grow in the nursery. And we're going to put it in the fridge for about 3 months. Yeah. And then we'll be planting it in the greenhouse probably about like February or March, is right on time.
And then we have a question about, because we grow this in our nursery, and it was a question from Nick about where are the nurseries?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked. Yeah, we have a nursery. We have 3 nurseries. Wow. One is here in Petaluma, California, just down the way from our office at Casa Grande High School. So nice. That's one where we're growing a lot of our plants right now for this upcoming restoration season. We also partner with San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge down off Highway 37, if you're familiar. There's one in the middle of nowhere out there where we grow a lot of our transition zone or marsh species for around the bay's edge. And then there's actually another one in East Novato at the Hamilton Wetlands or Novato Baylands where they're growing tons of different plants for the restoration work in the Hamilton Wetlands and the Belmarin Keys area. So we're spread, but we're North Bay, Marin, Sonoma, generally. Yeah. Thanks for asking. And I guess 2 minutes is what I'm being told, and I just really want to show you this because one of my esteemed and brilliant coworkers, Veronica, just processed a bunch of these seeds yesterday, and this one's a really fabulous plant and one that maybe we use more in the South Bay. This is Eriogonum fasciculatum, or California buckwheat. It's really fabulous. It's ready to be collected right now, at least over here in Sonoma County. And what we're collecting here are these beautiful flowers. This one's in the Polygoniaceae family, or the buckwheat family, not helpful. And they create these beautiful inflorescence that stick out at the top of the stalks. Inflorescence is just a fancy word for flowers. And they turn this kind of like rusty brown. These ones were collected a little bit early, which is totally fine. And it's really actually great for us today because you can kind of see that they have these beautiful white flowers. We're promoting this plant today because it's a really great pollinator plant, and it's really, really wonderful for all different kinds of bird species, bee species, butterflies, pollinators, and it's really great at dealing with horrible conditions. Like, it likes bad soil, it likes no water, it likes neglect, It likes just strife, you know? Which is fabulous when we're thinking about restoration, because generally we're planting on like degraded landscapes, and we like to be thinking about all different kinds of wildlife, pollinators included. And what I'm like leaning on here, so casually, so cool, so normal, so relatable, is our sieve. A sieve is just a fancy word for like a strainer, and we have all these different levels here of different wire grit widths, and as you go down, you'll notice that they get smaller and smaller and smaller, because that's what we like to do with the seeds like this, and a lot of the seeds we grow in the nursery is we take our seeds, and I'll be like, wow, thank you, V and Sam and Nick, for collecting this Eriogonum fasciculatum on my birthday out on Stage Gulch Road. As we pour it in the top. And then what we do is, it's not even that fancy, we just mash it. You mash it with your fingers down, and what we're trying to do is we're breaking up all the chaff or extra little plant parts that we don't like I'm finding a lot of sticks up here. And then we keep doing that down the levels. It'll get finer and finer as we go. I wish you all were here so you could breathe in this dust with me. It's so good. Maybe wear a mask, maybe not. I don't know. Live your life. And as we get lower and lower, you can kind of see that things are filtering out, breaking up, and sifting through. And I'm not going to bore you with this today, but eventually we're going to end up with something like this. And this is what Veronica, our awesome and esteemed and brilliant coworker and straw apprentice, was working on yesterday. And right here you can see it's kind of still a mix of material. You see some stems and stuff in there, but this is largely the seeds. And actually, I printed out a zoomed in photo of what the seeds look like, just like this. So we can figure out exactly like when we're done, right? Because you can sieve all day, am I right, team? Yeah. So this is a really fabulous plant, Eriogonum fasciculatum, or California buckwheat. Fun one, and a great example of how we do a lot of our processing here at our storage unit in Petaluma, California, using the sieve. This plant, once all of this seed has been processed and good, and we've talked to all our senior project managers and project managers about plant lists, all this one needs is a 24-hour freshwater soak, and then we can sow it straight into the propagation flat in the greenhouse. And excuse me, and I think it has pretty good germination. Grew this one. That's pretty good.
Are the seeds the finest part of this flower, or like when you're sieving it down?
No, it's not, actually. I'm glad you asked. This was something that we figured out. I knew because I'm a professional, but also we figured out yesterday. Is we found that as you go down, there's a point where the seeds will stop filtering. We have that fine of a mesh. The seeds will stop filtering out, I think about this level thick 3 or so. And then right here is just like, what we call in the biz, plant trash, or just extra material, a lot of chaff, old flower parts, stuff that we were able to mash and dry, that was dry enough that we mashed through and it fell through. So what we're really looking for is stuff on this level. And if I were to be doing this in real life, which I am actually, I would just continue rubbing this, not pressing incredibly hard, but firmly enough to break up some plant material, and you can kind of see that the seeds are slowly revealing themselves. The sieves here, although they're like really excellent and amazing for seed processing, they were actually made for soil scientists to be able to filter out different materials and grades of materials through soil samples. But they work great for seed processing. That's what I use them for. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm. And it's 12.
And so, but I want to show you one more thing if you have a minute. I know you do, because you tuned in midday on a Wednesday, so you gotta have time. What I want to show you here is one of my, I don't know, every year I have a different favorite, and this is one of my favorites this year. This is the California coffee berry, or Frangula californica, and it creates these awesome little berries that you can see in this picture. Unfortunately, what happened was I like to keep my hands busy when I'm working or doing anything, and I was holding these seeds and I was just like squishing them as I was walking, and then they kind of like sat in the fridge for a little bit, and so I wish you were here because they smell so good. And this is all totally fine. When we're processing berries, generally we're gonna macerate them, smash them. Anyway, so if it happened a little early, that's great. And then what we're gonna do for this one, which is kind of interesting and why I'm glad you stuck around, is we can use a colander, which we're using here, and we are just filtering out the seeds. These seeds have been dyed because of the tannins in the berries, so they're really, really dark, which is gorgeous. Am I right? Look at them. It looks like I'm holding a handful of beetles, but I'm not. I'm holding Frangilla californica seeds, or coffee berry seeds, and you kind of can see here by doing this kind of thing, the skin of the berries floats aside, and you're able to collect the seeds. If you didn't mash them in your hand while you were walking and working, and you process them pretty immediately, they'll turn out a little bit like this, which is really cool and beautiful. They're kind of big seeds for a berry, which I think is like fun. And yeah, just like a lot of the other seeds we work with, these ones require a 24-hour freshwater soak and 3 months of cold stratification with perlite in a bag in the fridge. So we're going to put these ones probably into cold strat after these messages, and then these will be ready to plant in, I can't math, February? In the greenhouse, and we'll grow these out. And hopefully they'll look like this, and then they'll get planted out at a restoration site by some student. Great, I think that's it. We went over. Thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate your time, and I just like to encourage you to follow us on all the socials, on the Insta, on the Facebook, on the
Twitter,
Tumblr, and the Flickr. Yeah, don't do those. Facebook and Instagram is where we're most active, so feel free to follow us for more programming like this. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.